All right, y'all. Welcome to the show. Got a huge show for you guys today. It is as I am recording this. It is June 29th, 2026. Now, this will be coming out. I believe you're on July 7th, or let me actually look at my phone. Either July 7th or July 8th. We'll see. But I'm planning on. We'll have to figure it out. But yeah, this is one of the pre-recorded shows that we're doing. This is not live, but this will have to do. Of course, will be begrudgingly away from the studio here for about a week or so, but at least we'll still have content being pumped out. This is going to be 192. We did 191 the other day. 190, I'm recording that live tomorrow on Tuesday, so, just so you get your bearings straight. But, yeah, I got a big show for you guys today. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. Hopefully your 4th of July was good. Celebrating America's 250th birthday. Hopefully you had a fun one, eating hot dogs, drinking beer, going on the lake or whatever. At least that's what I guess I'll be doing, sort of stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, loaded show for you guys today. Got some thoughts on the SEC under duress a little bit. Got thoughts on the most powerful coaches in college football. Got a question, or not a question, but sort of something that I've been thinking about a little bit as we are sort of barreling our way towards media days and eventually fall camp opening up. Just something I wanted to pose out there. And then, of course, the team record projection series continues with USC, our first West Coast team we've done besides Oregon, which is kind of interesting. We've only done one West Coast team to my knowledge. So we'll have that. Of course, this show is not live, but if you're listening to this on YouTube when this premieres, whenever this will premiere on I believe a week from recording this. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're here. Be sure to like the videos, like the streams, and when we do them, be sure to follow us on Spotify. That's where you can get the extra pod, which is only exclusive to. Well, that's the only place you can find the extra pod. It is exclusive to Spotify. Yes, we are putting some of the clips on YouTube that are taken from the extra pod, but you can find the full extra pod on Spotify only. You can get the clips on YouTube. That's the audio. That's the visual component, if you will. So you can go over there for that. And be sure to follow us on the socials, on X, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. Those should be in the links in the channel description by clicking on the channel. Okay. All right, let's get in and jump right into what we're going to talk about today. Actually, let me get some water real quick. As I'm recording this today here on July 29th, high atop a blazing Jacksonville, Florida. Heat advisories in effect. Afternoon storms potentially. Now, as I'm looking out my window here, it's still like there's no clouds out there. I mean, there's clouds, but it's mostly partly cloudy. But I guarantee you, as soon as I'm done recording this in about an hour and 30 minutes, could be a total disaster, could be nothing. Who knows? It's Florida during the summer. You never know. But let's some water real quick because it is literally a furnace outside. I look like I got my fan blowing here, so if you hear that on the microphone, I'm sorry, but, in lieu of me sweating like a pig, this is the best result. So I'm going to get some water real quick, and we'll jump right into our first topic. Okay. Is the SEC actually under duress? That's a question I've seen a lot of folks floating around about. This whole duality of the SEC versus the Big Ten. The Big Ten has won more national championships recently. The SEC has won a whole bunch of national titles going back from 2000 all the way to within the last 26 years. So it's been a very interesting debate I've seen going on around the internet and on other shows as well. To me personally, I and I think we've even talked about this a couple weeks ago, not with this actual topic, but with the whole Brennan Sorsby thing, that I sort of view the SEC and sort of their them versus the Big Ten. That's sort of been the whole debate here. Or sort of the part of the reason why the SEC would be under duress, right? Because of how successful the Big Ten has been, and not to mention when they've won their national titles the past few years, it's all been different teams. You had Ohio State. Actually, we had Michigan before them. You had Ohio State a couple years ago. Then last year, you had Indiana and Coach 8. So that is definitely an interesting sort of era where we've entered into, where it's been the Big Ten consecutively for the last 3 years, but it's been 3 different teams. So it's not just one team dominating it. And I'm sure a lot of SEC fans would go, okay, if it's Ohio State running off your national titles, we can live with it. At least that's understandable. We can sort of understand that is a reality that could happen. But there's a problem though, and this is why I think a lot of SEC folks aren't happy with the current state of the conference. even though it's so top heavy, and even to a certain extent, their worst teams, well, besides Arkansas, maybe South Carolina, Kentucky, are still pretty competent and like okay. But it's not just the fact that they're winning 3 national titles in a row, the Big Ten, it's that it's been 3 different teams. That's the thing that really gets to the below the skin of the SEC fan bases, and going all the way to the top of the league commissioner, Greg Sankey, as well. I guarantee you that they are not fans of the fact that not is it just the Big Ten winning 3 national titles in a row. It's three different teams, and one of them being Indiana, who a lot of folks probably didn't even know that they had a football team like 3 years ago, right? So that's probably like the biggest thing that really bothers them. And not to mention, there's other things in addition to that, the draft picks and the fact that they have one of the best wide receivers in the country, and Jeremiah Smith up in Columbus, Ohio. The fact that, again, they have some of the best collection of coaches in the country as well. You have Dan Lanning, you have even Lincoln Riley to a certain extent, talking about his full body of work. And then, of course, you have Ryan Day, Coastal Canadian. You used to have people like Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin, but even including those guys historically, the Big Ten within the last few years, at least this decade, has had the best collection of coaches, I think, most national titles, and I think it's definitely on par talent-wise with the SEC. I mean, you can go look at the NFL draft. This past one, within the last few years, it has been the Big Ten and the SEC sort of going at each other. But as much as folks like me and others will bring up, oh man, the SEC is under duress and the Big Ten has sort of overthrown them, I will say, yes, within the last 5 years, has the Big Ten overthrown the SEC in terms of being the top conference in the country within the last 5 or 6 years? Yes, they have. I will say that. But if you want to go stretch all the way to the year 2000, with the turn of the millennia, going from the 1900s all the way to the 2000s, so going from the year 2000, going all the way to where we are right now, who is the best conference? Is it still the Big Ten? You could say that. I mean, look, again, talent-wise, they have a pretty sizable collection of national titles, some Heisman Trophy winners, but it's still the SEC. From the 2000 all the way till now, the SEC is still the best conference this millennia currently. Again, this decade, it's definitely the Big Ten. There's no question. So that I will agree with that, but I'll also counter and say, well, the SEC is still the best this millennium, going all the way from the year 2000 onward. Now, another thing I wanted to bring up, and I brought this up during the whole Brennan Sorsby stuff, when that was all going down and the reactions going on from within the Big Ten and the SEC, and that how I thought, this whole situation is sort of kind of a reminder of there being these two potential paths the future of the sport is going to go, whether it's through Congress and this bill that's being proposed, or it's the idea of the 4 policemen strategy, or I guess the big two, if you will, with the SEC and the Big Ten sort of taking control of the sport of college football and just really college athletics altogether. Now, they're already sort of doing that with the college football playoff, because again, remember, they have to sign off on any decisions that are sort of made. They're kind of course, being the 2 biggest partners. They have to agree to it, do anything that happens with the college football playoff. And my theory, and I brought this up before, is that I view the SEC and the Big Ten, while yes, it is, they hate each other and whatnot, it's almost kind of, again, I use this historical comparison. It's not the best comparison, but it's definitely close-ish. The Big Ten and the SEC, at least they weigh the people, the fan bases hate each other and whatnot. It's sort of like how it was back in the Cold War with the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, again, I wasn't around during that, so I don't really have much of an attachment to that hatred and the rivalry with the Soviet Union and whatnot. But if you want to go in the world of sports, particularly in college sports, yeah, the Big Ten and the SEC is just like the Soviet Union and the United States. It's both superpowers battling each other for control over, well, I guess back then it was the entire world. Now it's fighting for supremacy of controlling the sport. But then it's different because they hate each other, but they sort of need each other to keep the sport in control, if you will, or to at least keep the sport from totally falling apart. They still have to work. They still have to work with each other with the cultural playoff and other decision making. So again, it sort of feels like that, and maybe for a long time it was like that, where it really was this Cold War type thing, where it's SEC fans will rally around the flag with these other SEC schools whenever they get into the postseason, and then ditto with the Big Ten schools and fan bases. So to really answer this question, sort of a long-winded way of doing it, but to really wrap up this segment and to answer the question, is the SEC really under duress? I don't think so. I think both are pretty much equal, if you will. Now, again, this decade, yes, the Big Ten has surpassed the SEC. Have they totally dethroned them in terms of, going back with the start of the millennium? No, the SEC is still by far the more superior conference. And if you want to go even deeper, and we could definitely do that, the bottom tier, the bottom tier teams in the Big Ten are way worse than the bottom tier teams in the SEC. Now, yes, people like Bud Elliott bring up the whole take the checks, take the losses. That applies to both conferences, no doubt. That applies to both for sure. But even with that being a thing in the world of college football, the SEC's depth with all these teams, you take the SEC, you take the top teams, right? Texas, Georgia, Bama, Texas A&M, LSU. Most years those are your top five. Then you have a bit of a gap, not a major gap, but there is a gap. Then you have your Tennessees and your Floridas and your Auburns. I think Tennessee probably ahead of those other teams. But then you go layer down, and then you have teams like Mississippi State and your South Carolinas and your Missouris historically, and your Kentuckys and your Vanderbilts and your Arkansas of the world. So even once you go past the top two layers, those are still competent teams. Like Vanderbilt, they've had success recently. Arkansas has had varying degree of success, though they are definitely, again, one of those teams that take the checks, take the losses. Mississippi State, same thing. They've had their moments. Yes, they've beaten teams like Arizona State going back to last year and competing with teams like Texas and Florida. But they are usually, one of the teams that the bigger teams beat up on. Same thing for Kentucky and Missouri. Even if they're a varying of degree of, having success. You say all that, go to the Big Ten, and yes, they are very much so top heavy, similar to the SEC. But then you start going down, and you start to realize, there's a lot of the UCLAs and the Marylands, Minnesota some years. Have the Michigan States, Northwestern. Ugh. So yeah, the Big Ten, definitely in the lower levels, in the basement, quote unquote, is a lot worse than the SEC. The duality, or not duality, but sort of the whole makeup of the lower portions of the Big Ten. Yeah, it's a little more grimier. It's a little more disgusting. It's a little more really these teams, really Northwestern, who wins 2 games per year. Yeah, definitely a lot worse quality there than you have the SEC. Yes, those teams are also still in that same neighborhood, but the quality of the lower level SEC teams is usually a lot better than the lower level of the Big Ten, especially the ACC and the Big 12. So, is the SEC under duress? A little bit, definitely this decade, but going on with this millennia that we're in currently in the 2000s, or starting from the year 2000 onward, they're still the king. But the Big Ten is definitely obviously is number 2. Now beyond that, I don't know, Big 12, I guess ACC can be in there, whatever order you want them to be in. I don't really care. So, but yeah, that's an interesting. Thought that would have been an interesting topic, little exercise, I guess. But this next segment is an exercise, if anything. It's not really much of a question. Well, I guess it is a question, but it's also an exercise too, to kind of the tease and something here we're going to talk about here in a moment. But before we do that, again, since it is hot here, we're going to hydrate. Make sure we do that. And again, as we are here live on YouTube, we're not live on YouTube. It's live to me, but it's pre-recorded for you guys. So as we are here on YouTube right now and on Spotify, as we are recording right now, be sure to, again, like and subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, again, we cover college football. This is a college football show. Yes, we do dabble into other things, not related to football, and then we also dive into some, stuff with some coverage of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But you should just subscribe to the channel. The season's getting close. It's almost fall. Yes, it's hot right now as I'm recording this on June 29th, but I guarantee you, or at least I have it on good authority, that fall will be here soon. Meteorological summer is not that long. It only goes all the way until September 1st. We're getting ever so close to that date. So do not fear. We'll be strong. Next up here, wanted to touch on this. This is something that I talked about, I think, probably a year ago on one of the extra pods we did. But I figured, why not bring it back here for one of these shows? Because I think it's actually a very, very fascinating question/exercise we can do. Who is the most powerful head coach in college football? Now, 5 years ago, speaking of, within the last decade, maybe, well, not even 5 years. Let's just go 10 years, the last decade. Who would be the answer of this question? Would it be, who would have been? I think the majority of us, say 95%, some of that being maybe if you're an Ohio State fan or a Clemson fan, would obviously say Nick Saban. Like Nick Saban was the most powerful head coach in college football. But now we fast forward from 2016 all the way to now the year of our Lord 2026. Nick Saban is no longer in college football. He's on the ESPN's College Game Day desk. Urban Meyer, nowhere to be found. He's on with Fox now. Dabo Swinney, now losing his power a little bit. It's the Clemson Empire, if you will, if it was even really a thing. It was on the decline, going this way, going down. You've had a lot of changeover in the SEC. You have a whole new conference now, basically, with Oklahoma and Texas being in there. So then you have again, like we just talked about in the last segment, the rise of the Big Ten into 2020. So who is the most powerful voice or the most powerful head coach in college football now? Who is it now? I got some names on here. Now, a little, asterisk here. Should mention this at the beginning. Since we are using StreamYard instead of our usual Restream, which allows us to use graphics and stuff, kind of having to do this old school. We're having to read off stuff here, read off stuff here on my notes here in my Google Docs. So apologies for no graphics on the show. Again, this is how it's going to be for the pre-recorded shows, but I think a lot of you guys will be fine with it. The audio people won't really care about this because they just listen to it, so that doesn't really matter. But anyway, who are the most powerful head coaches in college football right now? Who are they? Well, we have, let's see, about a list of 5 or 6, I believe. I think it is actually 5. We'll go over these one by one and make the case for all of them. First one up here, Kirby Smart. Now, this would have been everyone's answer a few years ago when he started rattling off back-to-back national titles, beating Nick Saban in 2021, and then winning it again in 2022 by railroading TCU. So yes, Kirby Smart could be on this. Definitely, obviously, well, not could be. He obviously has to be on the list as a candidate, right, for being the most powerful head coach in college football. He should be on there. I mean, his recruiting, the fact that he's been able to keep his staff mostly together, the fact that he has won so many games every single year he's been there, averaging 10 years or 10 wins per year within his 10 years he's been there now, which is crazy now. Yeah, this is now 10 years since he's been at Georgia. So Kirby Smart clearly should be on here as a candidate for being the most powerful head coach in the sport. Behind him, or this is not really in order, but I guess it could be in order. I guess behind him would be Ryan Day. Again, every single year, sort of like Kirby Smart. Every single year, Ryan's been a head coach at Ohio State. Nothing but success, even though, folks like, freaking Shannon Sharp and all of them a couple years ago were saying, no, Ryan Day, bro, if he doesn't, beat Tennessee in the college football playoff in round 1, he needs to be fired, bro. Like, what are you talking about? Expectations, bro. Goes in and wins the national championship, basically giving everyone, including Shannon Sharp, the middle finger. Nothing against Shannon Sharp. I liked watching him when he was on Undisputed, which is just his show no longer exists anymore. But I did not agree with Shannon on that one and a lot of other folks. It wasn't just him. It was other folks like Stephen A. Smith and people like that. Skip Bayless too, I believe, was a part of that as well. So yeah, good for Ryan Day to prove those folks wrong, even though before all that he had a lot of success to begin with. I mean, again, his worst season was what? The 2020 year when they won 7 games and Kevin Warren tried to, shut down the entire Big Ten conference that year. So Ryan Day clearly should be up on this list if you were to do the candidates here. This next one, another obvious one. Coach Sig at Indiana clearly should be on here. I mean, his first 2 years in Indiana, boom, 11 wins, boom, 16-0. Just rattling them off like they're, you're doing the supermarket, the supermarket game show or whatever that existed back in the 90s or something, well before my time. But yeah, Coach Sig definitely should be on here. I mean, I think it's pretty. That one's definitely obvious now, but who knows within the next year or the next year or so if that changes, which is certainly not impossible, but definitely not likely. So those top 3, I think, are pretty obvious. Now, there is, I will just say, and we'll circle back to this towards the end, there is one name I don't have on here that I'll mention here in a minute that could be on here, but again, I sort of hinted at this a little bit earlier as to why he's not on this list. So just again, we'll circle back to that here in a minute. Next on this list here, candidate. This one may surprise you. Lane Kiffin. Again, I know a lot of folks will say Lane Kiffin. Like, why? He hasn't won anything. Well, he's won a lot of games, but both at Ole Miss, at also Florida Atlantic. Now, yes, you can bring up the USC thing. Did not go well. That is true. That I don't even think Lane Kiffin would, lie to you and say that was a success. It was not. He got fired in the middle of the year in 2013. So with that in mind, yes, that is true. But lately, the way he has sort of dominated the sport, he's dominated social media. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone talked about him last year with the whole will he, won't he leave? Twice, actually, both last year and in 2022 with the whole Auburn thing. So I guess especially, too, with the coaching carousel, obviously Lane Kiffin has to be on this list. Whether you like him or not, he has to be on this list. I mean, now he's at LSU now. He has by far the biggest job he has had, even including USC and with the Raiders. I think just the fact that he is at LSU gives you a little bit more. It gives a little more weight to it, right? In terms of how much power you have now. And I think Lane Kiffin, if things can get going there, and we've talked about it, whether it was, I believe, was the last live show we did, or as I'm recording this, it was one of the shows we did last week that we talked about. Or no, it was the extra pod. That's right. We talked about LSU, and also with the record projection we did with them a couple weeks ago. That there was a lot of expectations for LSU and Lane Kiffin, even in year one, because of how friendly their schedule is this year. I think it is more or less a win-now situation for him, based on how friendly it is, and not to mention that it is LSU, and the last few head coaches, not including Brian Kelly, obviously, have won national titles, right? Les Miles made it to 1-1. Ed Orgeron made it to 1-1. He was 1-0. And Nick Saban 1-1. So it is true that most LSU head coaches, again, and this, going from the year 2000 onward, besides Brian Kelly, have made it to at least one national championship, or at least won the national championship. It's a lot of pressure on Lane Kiffin for sure, but I think just because that he has dominated social media, he dominated last year's coaching carousel, he dominated the coaching carousel in 2022, he is definitely up there as he's definitely a candidate for being the most powerful head coach in the sport. And then the final one here I'll mention, at least on the actual list here, is Steve Sarkisian. Again, I understand, sort of like Lane Kiffin, his early career did not go very well. Ironically, at USC, he replaced him. Believe it or not, at USC. A lot of folks forget that. And before that, he was at Washington. So I understand, yes, his tenure both at USC and Washington, it wasn't terrible. It's just, yes, he had off-the-field issues and personal problems with addiction stuff. So that I get that. It just wasn't really, sustainable the way he was doing it. But, he goes and, I think he goes to the NFL first and then goes to Alabama with Nick Saban, learns under him. Then he goes to Texas. Then he goes to Texas. Rough start year one. They lose to Kansas of all teams. I guess a little bit different now since, Lance Leipold's a, pretty good coach. Highly underrated even now. But his first year, a couple years at Texas, a bit of a slow start. Then, boom, 2023, semifinals of Quinn Ewers. Then the year after that, they're the number one team in the country for a little bit. Now they have Arch Manning there. And, last year was, bump on the road. But this year, I think a lot of folks have massive expectations for him. So, again, because he's at Texas and how Texas is going now, especially within the, in the world of recruiting and the portal too, he's definitely shown that should be on this list and should be a candidate. Now, circling back to what I mentioned earlier, and we'll move on. The one name I did not mention here that a lot of folks are probably wondering, where was he at? That's Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is not on this list, or at least in my opinion, he would not be a candidate for being the most powerful head coach in college football. Now, I just mentioned earlier why he's not the case, but I kind of want to explain a bit more. But obviously, Dabo 10 years ago would obviously be, of course, on this list. He would probably be behind Nick Saban clearly, but not like overtaking him. And of course, there would be other names on there that are not in the sport anymore, right? I.e. Ryan Day or Urban Meyer, not Ryan Day. He's still a coach at Ohio State as far as I know. But of course, Urban Meyer would be up there too. But Dabo Swinney would have also been up there, of course, right? Or at least he was about to win his first national title. And a few years later, he wins his second one. He's already been to three. And of course, he He has been to multiple college football playoff games. He's had a lot of success with recruiting and draft picks, and go look at this past year for Clemson. Yes, that team was pretty bad for Clemson standards. They still had a smorgasbord of players going to the NFL draft. Okay, so it's not like yes the teams have underperformed, but the talent's still there. But like I mentioned earlier, Clemson is the whole Clemson empire again. Even if it was like a thing, which I don't think it really was a thing, but I understand why folks thought it was a thing. The empire is in decline. Like again, while they're still pumping out talent, they're still sending guys to go play on Sunday. They're not really in the best shape right now. They're in decline. They've had a lot of turnover on the coaching staff. They just fired Garrett Riley after this past season, who I thought was a competent offensive coordinator, but I guess he wasn't, or at least wasn't good enough for Clemson. They've had turnover on the defensive side. They've lost Brent Venables to OU, to Oklahoma. Now he's the coach there now. So, yes, the Clemson has been on the decline, even though, again, they still have been pumping out a lot of NFL talent. So that is why he is not on his list. I just don't think he's really relevant anymore, at least right now. Now, I will say this. Let's just say, like Dabo Swinney and Clemson, they win the national title this year. They actually do it. The most Dabo thing ever would be to have multiple years of just, kind of okay, but then last year was really not okay. Then he turns around and wins the national title. And believe it or not, we've seen this before. It was early on in his career, right? At Clemson, where I think it was his first full year. I mean, his second full year. It didn't really matter. It was still early in his coaching career. It was in 2010. Clemson barely made it to a bowl game that year, and they lost to, who was it, like Toledo and the Carmichael Carnivore or something like that in Detroit. And then the year after, in 2011, they go to the ACC championship game. So it's not. So we've seen this before. We've seen this happen with Clemson, and Dabo, where it's the woes Clemson thing, and everyone's shitting on Clemson. Then the year after, well, just in the microphone and pick up the snap, but you get the idea. Year later, boom, ACC championship. So it's not impossible to see that happen with Clemson. That they could hypothetically, get back to at the very least to the playoffs and maybe make a run. But if Dabo does win the national title, unlikely as it is, his name would be on here again. Then we have to, think about putting him back on the list and really consider him being a very powerful coach. At that point, he would have the most national titles of all active head coaches in college football, which is kind of crazy to think about. So again, going over the list here, and then we'll wrap up the segment. Kirby Smart clearly should be a candidate here. Ryan Day also should be a candidate. Kirk Cincinnati, of course, yes. Lane Kiffin, controversial, but again, because of how much weight his name carries, especially now with the success he had at Ole Miss and now him being at LSU, and how much he has dominated the coaching carousel multiple times now. I think he should be definitely a candidate for being a powerful head coach, or the most powerful head coach. Then there's Steve Sarkisian, just sitting on the oil well that is, metaphorically and literally Texas, with their talent, the resources, and the fact that they have been relevant. Even the SEC, they won the conference a couple years ago, made it to the conference championship but didn't win it. But they've been to the playoff every single year, or not every single year, but most years than not since he's been there. And again, the one name I considered putting on here but didn't was, of course, Dabo Swinney. But I just I just think that Clemson's on the decline. It's an empire on decline. Even if Clemson was an empire, but I don't think they are. But yeah, most powerful head coach. I don't know. I guess if I had to choose, if you were to force me to choose a name here, of all these, like who would it be? Probably Kirby Smart. But again, you can make an argument for definitely the top three, especially the top two of Ryan Day. Again, if you choose Ryan Day as the most powerful coach in college football, I wouldn't blame you. Coach Sig, yeah, I wouldn't blame you. The other two, Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, I mean, I could see why they would be candidates, but them being the most powerful head coach, actually being the one you choose, that would be a bridge to Salami. that would be a little too far. But if I were to choose, definitely would be Ryan Day or Kirby Smart. Probably Kirby Smart, but Ryan Day is really enticing as well. So let me know in the comments, who do you think is the most powerful head coach in college ball. Moving right along here, merrily along. Let's see, team record projection, then we'll get out of here. And so far, so good. No rain, no storms. So that's fantastic. We're going to be getting out here, or out of here quickly. How about that? Around a 3-minute show, which is fine with me. I'm sure a lot of you guys, especially around this time of the year with vacations and stuff, or the upcoming, at least at the time of recording, July 4th holiday. Probably don't have time to watch a full podcast, but if you are going to watch this when this video premieres, sometime here within the next week or so, thank you again. It helps us out a lot. The season's coming up. We would like to have a lot more subscribers than the current numbers we have. Now, the current numbers we do have are good. 14 subscribers is nothing to sneeze at for some people, but if we're wrong with wanting a little bit more and hoping that is the case. So again, if you're new here, or if you're a recurring viewer, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That's all we're asking. Don't even have to put on the whole notification thing. You can just turn it off. I do it personally, but no, I guess that's just me. But anyway, we'll end the show here with the team record projection with USC. Speaking of the Big Ten, a lot of Big Ten being featured on the show. Didn't plan it out that way, but then folks accuse me of being an SEC homer, but maybe that's the opposite. Maybe we are, Big Ten show now. Or we're not. Obviously, we care about all of college football. Even the conferences that are noticeably weaker, we'll still talk about them. But anyway, one last hydrate break. I'm going to, again, divulge into some water here, and then we'll be going on and finishing up the show. Team record projection series. I've been doing this for, I think, well over 2 months now. We started this back actually in April. Did a little bit earlier than usual, knowing that we were going to have, a couple of unfortunate vacation days within the summer. But I guess so far it's worked out. Probably the best decision we've made in terms of how we've gotten. Looks my camera, iPad here. There we go. In terms of scheduling things out, so it's worked out pretty well for us. And I think we'll continue doing this probably until August. I think that's when we'll stop, and then we'll get into our predictions for the season. But USC team record projection. Now, of course, Lincoln Riley, a lot of expectations this year, as a recurring theme on this show with certain coaches. They've done a really good job of recruiting. I would just say that they had the #1 class last year. This past cycle, they've been stacking up some classes. Yes, it is a relatively young class, but they're all going to contribute somehow, some way. I'm pretty sure of that. Lincoln has also done a pretty good job of structuring his roster and his coaching roster as well. Bringing in Deontay Lynn a few years ago to help the defense. It got better. Now he brings in Gary Patterson, who, again, yes, it is the same Gary Patterson who was coaching at Texas Christian not that long ago. So how about that? But USC. Now, again, I'm pretty sure we have not done USC yet, which is kind of amazing to me. I have to double check here on the old Google Doc. Yeah, we have not done USC yet, which is crazy. I could have sworn we did, but when I checked earlier, I'm like, no, we didn't. But anyway, yes, so they've done well getting the roster built up, and then of course they do have a returning starter in J.D. Mayava. Always nice to have Lincoln Riley. And again, they also have done well with their coaching staff and done well with their recruiting. Now their schedule, again, I would show you this, but StreamYard doesn't really let you do graphics. At least it's not easy, if you will. There's no Notre Dame, so there's that. So that rivalry's dead for now. They still do have a fairly interesting schedule, so I'll go ahead and read it off to you, both the folks here on YouTube and on Spotify. They play week 0 against San Jose State. It's on NBC. Interesting. Then they play a Friday night game against Fresno State. So, a regional G5 team back-to-back there. Then they have the Louisiana Raging Cajuns of all teams there the week after. So they should be 3-0. I mean, if they lose to San Jose State, then unfortunately there's a lot of problems there, at least I would assume. And then they go on September 19th. They play Rutgers. And you may think to yourself, oh, it's at home, right? It should be easy. Well, it's on the road. Yeah, it's on the road. That's concerning, given who you have the following week. But That's not an easy road trip there, especially it being early in the year, and that Rutgers is at that point. I would imagine they would have had no losses yet, so they're still pretty much going to be hyped up. So that's a game that if we were doing the upset alerts for this week, I believe that is week 3, technically. I guess for USC it's week 4. That'll be on there, and that would be a game I would be concerned about. So just a little preview there down the road. And, part of it is because, the travel, West Coast team going to the East Coast, never been a fan of that, has never worked out. But not to mention, too, you have a game against Oregon that is the week after. So it's a look-ahead spot, too. So it's the, 2-for-1 special there with multiple concerns. So then you have, again, like I mentioned, Oregon the week after. That's going to be a tough game. You're probably going to be dogging that game. You have Washington at home. Probably a favorite, I would imagine. Then on October 10th, you go to Penn State. Probably going to be a dog in that game as well. So that's already 2 games there. You're going to be, you won't be a favorite in already. And there's more on here. So that won't be just him. We won't be the last one. And you go to Wisconsin. So you have a bye week in between. Then you have Ohio State. That's another game you'll be not favored in at home. So that works out, I guess. I mean, go ask Oregon how that worked out for them a couple years ago. They won that game. So maybe there's some hope there. But then on, what is that? November 14th, so another bye week. They get 2 because they had the week 0 game. They play Indiana on the road. So congratulations there. And then you end the season with Maryland and UCLA. So you should end the season 2-0. But there's a lot of tough games. There's a lot of tough games here. You have Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State, Washington, Oregon, at Rutgers, even Wisconsin on the road. They're not really easy either. So there is a scenario here where, yes, there's a lot of hype of USC. Yes, there's a lot of competitive pressure with Lincoln Riley. There's a path here, but they can really screw up here. They can go 6-6, 7-5, which I guess, that would get him fired, even though I would not be a fan of that. But again, I've used the comparison before already. This is sort of reminding me a little bit of Auburn and Gus Malzahn in 2017, where there was a lot of pressure on Malzahn to, take advantage of a workable schedule, and also you've been building up talent over, or at least at the time, it was 2 years, and it's sort of the same thing with USC. But that's a really tough schedule, man. Again, that trip to Rutgers early on in the year. Again, I know a lot of folks will look over and go, "Well, it's Rutgers. They should beat them, no problem." Like, I don't know, man. Like, that's a look-at spot. It's college football. Weird things can happen. It's not like the NFL where things aren't always chaotic for the most part. At least with the more talented teams always losing to the lesser talented teams. But anyway, so the worst case scenario for USC, I think is 7-5. I mean, again, there's a lot of games on that schedule where you go, friendly dog in that game. Yeah, probably dog in that game. Now, the good thing for USC is that they do get 2 of those big games at home. So you would imagine they would try to split those, I guess, somehow. Being Oregon, Ohio State, that helps. But, man, going to Indiana, going to Penn State, not going to be easy. For the worst case for them, I think 7-5. Best case scenario for USC, I think it's 10-2. This team and the way they've been structuring their roster and whatnot, and how they've been doing that, and not to mention with the coaching staff, 10-2 is not impossible. It's gonna be tough. No one says it's gonna be easy, but best case scenario there, 10-2. I do believe the most reasonable is the same as best case scenario. I think 10-2 is definitely in the cards here. Again, if they can at least split the big 4 there, beat Oregon, beat Ohio State, and then you take your losses on the road at Penn State or Indiana, or just some combination of those, then I think USC is a playoff team. If not, and they go 8-4 or worse, then it's then it might be the end of Lincoln Riley. I'm not a big fan of that. I do like Lincoln Riley. I like his style of offense. I think he's a very competent coach. I think he is a coach that a lot of folks, I'm not going to say they misunderstand him, but it definitely gets a lot of shit because the whole notion is, he doesn't play defense, bro. But he has gotten better, and he has done, at least in my opinion, a pretty good job of, getting USC to a point where they are more balanced. It's not just one side of football's, doing everything like it was both at Oklahoma and his, first couple of years at USC. So that is a positive change, but is it too late? We'll see. And that's the show. How about that? Around 40 minutes long. So again, we'll be doing more of these pre-recorded shows. I'll probably do another one tomorrow or another one on Wednesday. I guess we'll see how the schedule works out. But tomorrow, again, as we're recording this on the week of July 4th, so I'm recording this today. This will be out the following week. Before I did the show, the second show for this week, already recorded and it's scheduled to premiere actually on the channel. We are also going to do again a extra pod tomorrow. I think we'll do that, and then we will have a show for Tuesday tomorrow. So we'll go live tomorrow. And then on Wednesday we'll see if we do another show. If not, then it'll just be kind of is what it is. But we'll see. But yeah, that's it for the show. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, for listening on Spotify or here on YouTube. But yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the streams, like the videos. Be sure to follow us on the socials. Again, go to the channel description. And also, again, be sure to follow us on the podcast feed. That's where you can get the aforementioned extra pod. Only place you can get it's over there. So just be sure you are aware of that. So until the next time you see me, take care. Have a great rest of your week. And we'll see you guys on the next show.